Football is supposed to be simple. 22 people chase a ball around for about 90 minutes. That's it really. It's a game. And yet somehow people have died over it. Cities erupt into riots. Players receive death threats. Fans attack one another. Governing bodies have used it for propaganda and corruption. And entire nations have nearly gone to war. Now, you gotta ask yourself this. How does a game become something that people are willing to fight for? The answer isn't that football makes people worse. It's that football reveals something that's already there and beneath the surface. Because football isn't really about football, it's about identity. In today's episode, I want to try and answer one simple but very complex question. Why does football bring out the worst in people? Because listen, at the end of the day, right, when it all comes down to it, football, it's just a game, right? Or is it? Let's talk. Yes, my people, welcome back to the Let's Talk H YouTube channel. My name is Henry. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode, guys. As I always say, I thoroughly appreciate it. Before we get into the crux of the video, man, please do me a small favor. Just a small favor. I promise you that it doesn't cost a penny. Please like the video. Please share the video. Please hype the video. And most importantly, if you like what you see, if you like what you hear, then please don't hesitate to hit that subscribe button. But guys, listen, let's get into this latest episode. You know, I decided that I wanted to do a football related episode because obviously football is probably my most loved sport. No, matter of fact, it is my most loved sport. As you can tell by the title of this video, this episode is about why football brings out the worst in people. Just to be transparent, for those of you who don't know, I'm an Arsenal fan. Champions again, ole ole. I had to remind people, especially all the rival fans. I've been an Arsenal fan for about 27, 28 years of my life, so that's a really long time. And I just thought it was appropriate for me to make an episode like this because even though I love football, I feel like my emotional attachment to football has become less and less over the years. When I was younger, I used to be a football fanatic. Like football, you really used to dictate my emotions. Anytime Arsenal had lost the game, it would literally affect me for the whole day, for the whole week. I wouldn't be able to eat properly. I wouldn't be able to sleep properly. I wouldn't be able to function, basically. That's how much football had a chokehold over my life when I was younger. But obviously, as I've got older now, football has become less of an emotional crux for me. The same can't be said for many people across the globe. Like football for many people is their life, right? Football brings out so many different emotions in people. Football has an impact and effect on people like no other sport, right? Like I said, I just wanted to kind of investigate it, right? Because, you know, I feel like it's an interesting topic. Enough talking, let me get straight into it. I'm going to break this, segment down into pieces, into parts, which I normally do. This part specifically, I've titled, It Was Never Just a Game. Let's get into it. So humans have always divided themselves into tribes. Thousands of years ago, those tribes fought over food, land, and survival. And today, our tribes are often football clubs. Now, when someone says, I'm a Liverpool supporter, or I'm Barcelona till I die, they are rarely talking about entertainment. They're talking about who they are. Sociologists call this social identity theory. People naturally divide the world into us and them. That's probably why there's so much division in this world, right? And once that happens, something fascinating occurs. Our brains begin defending our own group. This could be better known as tribalism. Even when the group was created over something completely arbitrary, football simply gives people the perfect tribe, the perfect community, colors, songs, history, heroes, villains, generations of family loyalty. The club becomes a part of your identity. So when your team loses, it doesn't just feel like the team lost. It feels like you've lost. Now guys, imagine this. You spent hundreds of pounds on tickets, sometimes even your life savings. You've traveled across the country. Your friends support the same club. Your parents raised you this way. Your mood for the next week, maybe even for the rest of the month, depends on 90 minutes. That's an incredible amount of emotional pressure, considering the fact that you have little to no impact on the final result. Football compresses all of that into one event. The final whistle becomes an emotional explosion. That's why stadiums produce scenes unlike any other place on earth. People cry, people hug strangers, people collapse to the floor, and unfortunately, sometimes people become violent. Not because football tells them to, but because emotion overwhelms reason. Now, healthy rivalry makes the sport exciting. Let's keep it real. Without rivals, football essentially will be dead. It will be boring. But hatred makes them dangerous. Take the Old Firm derby in Glasgow, for example. Celtic versus Rangers isn't simply about football. Historically, it's been connected to religion, politics, national identity, and centuries of conflict. The football match becomes the latest chapter in a much older story. The same is true in many places. Red Star Belgrade and Dinamo Zagreb, Boca Juniors and River Plate, Galatasaray and Fenerbahce, Arsenal versus Tottenham, Man United versus Liverpool, Barcelona versus Real Madrid. These aren't just sporting events, they are cultural battlegrounds. Football didn't create these tensions, it inherited them. So guys, I want to quickly touch on something that is really sensitive and unfortunately still goes on in football today. And I've simply titled this segment, When the Final Whistle Follows People Home. The consequences of football don't always stay inside the stadium. Sometimes they follow people home. One of the most disturbing patterns researchers have observed is a rise of reports of domestic abuse around major football matches. In England, several studies have found that police recorded domestic abuse increase when a national team plays, particularly after an emotionally charged match and unexpected defeats. Some researchers have also found increases after wins, suggesting that it's the intensity of the occasion rather than simply losing. Now, it's crucial to understand what this all means. Football doesn't transform kind and loving partners into abusers. Domestic abuse is about power, control, violence, not about the sport. However, what football can do is create a situation where heightened emotion, alcohol consumption, and social expectations coincide. For someone who's already abusive or prone to violence, that emotional environment may increase the likelihood of an incident. For victims, the final whistle can be the beginning of the most frightening part of the day. That's why during major tournaments such as the World Cup and the European Championships, charities and police forces often run public awareness campaigns, reminding victims that support is available and encouraging people to look out for friends, family, and neighbours. Now, all of this is a reminder, that the passion that millions of, football fans and supporters experience as a celebration can also, in some homes, become something far darker. Now, picking back off of that, I want to talk about when football turns violent. Perhaps the darkest example came in the 1980s. English football developed a serious hooliganism problem. Organised groups of supporters deliberately sought out violence. These groups are better known as football firms. Matches became excuses for street battles. The tragedy reached its peak during disasters like the Hell Cell Stadium disaster in 1985. Before the European Cup final of that year, violence between supporters caused a wall to collapse. 39 people died. Now, football wasn't responsible by itself. Poor stadium design, inadequate policing, alcohol, crowd psychology, all combined into disaster. Then, only 4 years later, the Hillsborough disaster claimed 97 Liverpool supporters due to catastrophic crowd management. Different causes, different failures. But another reminder that football crowds can become increasingly dangerous when systems fail. Now, even though this was, 30, 40, 50 years ago, the effects of those disasters are still being felt today. Tragedies like that never completely heal. And obviously football has come a long way since then, right? Now guys, I want to speak a little on racism. And you can say that racism is a societal problem, it's a societal issue, which it very much is, right? But it definitely comes out a lot in football. Football also reflects society's ugliest prejudices. Black players have repeatedly faced racist abuse, bananas thrown onto pitches, monkey chants, online harassment, even after scoring winning goals. Players like Vinicius Jr., Marcus Rashford, and countless others have spoken openly about the abuse that they've received. Now, it's tempting to ask, why does football attract racists? But perhaps the better question is, why wouldn't it? Football is one of the biggest public stages. Wherever society's problems exist, football magnifies them. So guys, I want to move on to talking about the internet. Yes, the internet. Because, let's keep it real, it's made everything a lot worse. Years ago, fans argued in pubs. However, today, millions argue online. Every mistake becomes a viral clip. Every refereeing decision becomes a conspiracy. Every player receives thousands of abusive messages daily. Algorithms reward outrage, not nuance. The angrier people become, the more engagement platforms receive. Football discussion slowly transforms into permanent conflict. No one remembers the reasonable opinion anymore. Everyone remembers the most extreme one. Honestly, football discourse, football discussion right now is absolutely in the mud. It's never been more in the mud than it is now. You can say that's the fault of a lot of things. You can say that the introduction of platforms like Twitter and Instagram, that fan channels have definitely played a part in that as well. As somebody who loves to have really balanced football discussions. Listen, I'm all here for banter, right? Because banter is part of football. Banter now has been replaced with rage baiting. It seems that that's what people just want to do now. They want to rage bait. They want to say the most outlandish things so that they can get, retweets, and so that they can get likes. The more, engagement your tweet or what you say generates, the more revenue you get, right? That's how these social media platforms work. People are just saying the most outlandish stuff. People are saying things that are going to rile up people. It's just sad that, you can't really have a really balanced discussion anymore on, any of these social media platforms. You've got big accounts online, these sort of football influencers, these sort of football social media influencers, and they're at the top of your algorithm. And this is having a snowball effect, and it's creating an army of people who just want to be like them, right? Because they're seeing how much engagement that their tweets are generating. And like I said, engagement equals money. The economy is so bad right now that people are just trying to make money however way they can. What's, I think, more sad to me is the fact that it's not just these social media football influencers that are doing this. It's big media companies that are also getting involved in these rage baiting sort of antics. And that's how you know we're absolutely in the mud right now, right? When big corporations have started to do this. Now, guys, I want to quickly touch on the business side of football, because as we're seeing right now in the news with Infantino and FIFA, corruption is very real in the modern game. Modern football is also an enormous business. Broadcast deals are worth billions. Transfer fees are over 100 million. Global brands, state ownership, political influence. When so much money enters the game, the stakes become even higher. Corruption scandals, as we've seen over the years with FIFA. Financial rule violations, as we've seen many times with the likes of Chelsea. Refereeing conspiracies, as we saw in the 2026 AFCON final. Whether these conspiracies are true or not doesn't matter. The perception alone fuels mistrust. Supporters begin believing everyone is against them, which only strengthens tribalism. I want to talk a little bit about the football war and give a very direct example. The most famous example people mention is the so-called football war between Honduras and El Salvador in 1969. It's often described as war caused by football. But to be honest with you, having looked into this, I think it's quite misleading. The two countries already had severe tension over immigration, land ownership, and politics. The World Cup qualifiers became the spark, not the fuel. Football didn't create the conflict. It simply provided the moment everything exploded. Football rarely invents hatred. It exposes hatred and magnifies hatred that already existed. Now, for me, one of the strangest things about football is that perfectly ordinary people can behave completely differently inside a crowd. Psychologists call this de-individuation. When people become a part of a massive group, they often feel anonymous, less personally responsible, more willing to shout things, throw objects, or join actions that they never would consider alone. You know what's crazy about this one? I've seen perfectly ordinary, level-headed people, right? They're level-headed people outside of football. But as soon as they get into a stadium, right? I've seen this with my own two eyes. They become a different person. So guys, I also want to try and be balanced, right? Because although I've made, quite a few arguments as to why football can bring the worst out of people, I also want to give an examples of why football can bring the best out of people. Because it can, and it has done, and it will continue to do so. So here's the twist. Everything we've discussed in this video so far, identity, emotion, community, passion, those things aren't inherently bad. They're exactly why football is also capable of being incredibly good. Supporters raising millions for charity, fans applauding rival players, communities rebuilding after a tragedy, nations celebrating together. Football can unite strangers faster than almost anything can. The same force that creates division can also bring belonging and unity. It all depends on where people direct that passion. So guys, just to sum up, why does football seem to bring the worst out of people? Because football matters, not objectivity, but psychologically. It compresses identity, history, politics, family, community, pride, and emotion, all into 90 minutes. Football doesn't create tribalism, humans do. Football doesn't invent hatred, humans do. Football simply gives those emotions a stadium and a home. And maybe that's why it's called the beautiful game. Not because it's perfect, because it reflects us as a human race, at our most joyful, our most loyal, our most united, and unfortunately, sometimes at our very worst. So guys, thank you so much for tuning in to this latest episode. Let me know what you thought about this in the comment section below. I wanted to do something quite different, but let me know if you agree with the whole football brings the worst out of people, man. I want to hear your thoughts and comments in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, comment, hype, and subscribe. And I'll be back again real soon with another one. But until then, my people, stay blessed. I'm out. Peace.